All right, so you know how it is, right? Like you hear something pretty wild, especially when it comes to politics, and you just kind of got to stop and think, hold on, is that the whole story here? That's exactly what happened to me when I heard Donald Trump talking in Las Vegas recently.
Oh, yeah. What was that about?
He made this claim about the IRS,
Uh-oh.
said he was going to fire or move something like 88,000 IRS agents to the border.
Ooh.
Yeah, 88,000. So, with the IRS being something that pretty much everyone has to deal with at some point or another, claims like that really tend to grab your attention.
They really stick with you, don't they?
Exactly. And so we thought it'd be interesting to kind of dig a little deeper, see what's really going on behind that number.
Absolutely. See if there's more to the story.
Right. So this all went down during a stop Trump made at the Circa Casino and Resort in Vegas. And he was really focused on what he described as this huge increase in IRS agents under President Biden. So, today our mission is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We're going to take a look at the facts as presented in this transcript from the Ring of Fire YouTube channel and see how they compare to that claim.
Yeah, we want to get into the nitty-gritty of what Trump actually said and then hold that up against what this source material suggests is the reality of the situation.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Trump starts by saying, and I'm quoting here, "On day one, I immediately halted the hiring of any IRS agents."
Okay.
Now, the transcript does point out that there's a little bit of a nuance here. It mentions a 90-day moratorium on federal hiring that happened at the beginning of Trump's presidency.
Right. That's an interesting distinction to make right off the bat, isn't it? A temporary pause is totally different from a complete and permanent stop to all hiring. It suggests that what he actually did might have been a lot more limited in scope than how he's describing it now.
It does, yeah. And then he goes on to say that after those 90 days, any hiring would need approval from, get this, Elon Musk's Doge office, which, if we're being honest, sounds more like a joke than an actual policy.
Yeah. It definitely paints a pretty funny picture.
And the transcript seems to think so, too.
Yeah, it's more likely he's just taking a jab at bureaucracy
Yeah.
than actually proposing that as a real government procedure.
Right. But here's the big one, the part that really got us thinking.
Okay.
Trump then says that they hired or tried to hire 88,000 new workers to go after you. And this is the claim that we really want to understand.
Yeah.
He even talks about either firing all of them or moving them to the border and, get this, giving them guns.
An army of IRS agents on the border, huh?
It's a pretty wild image, right? But the real question, the thing this transcript really wants us to think about, is whether that initial claim about 88,000 new hires is actually true.
Right. Is there any truth to that?
So this is where the Ring of Fire transcript really starts to push back. They're very strongly against the idea that these supposed new hires were aimed at the average person, the you in Trump's statement. Their argument is that the money set aside for increasing IRS staff was mainly intended to go after high-wealth individuals and large corporations. The transcript points out that those are the areas where tax avoidance can be a way bigger and more complicated issue.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And if you think about the overall fairness of the tax system, that's a pretty big difference in focus, right?
Right, huge.
Like, who are they really going after with these potential new hires?
Right.
The transcript also brings up something that's really relevant to the people Trump was talking to in Vegas. They suggest that a lot of those people were probably actually getting refunds from the IRS.
Oh, interesting.
Which kind of flips the script on this idea that the IRS is just this big, bad force that's always coming after everyone.
It does. It makes you think about your own experience with the IRS, right?
Yeah.
For most people, it's about getting money back, not getting audited.
Exactly. It challenges that idea that the IRS is always the bad guy.
Right.
But here's the most important point, the real core of the counter argument in this transcript. Those 88,000 agents Trump keeps talking about, they weren't actually hired.
They weren't.
Even though there was funding for potential new hires in the 2022 infrastructure package.
Oh, wow.
And then, to really drive the point home, the transcript throws in this statistic that kind of puts everything into perspective.
Okay.
They say that the total number of IRS employees right now is somewhere around 80,000.
Wow.
So if that's accurate, then Trump is talking about firing or moving more people than the entire agency currently employs.
That's a pretty big difference.
It's a huge discrepancy, and this transcript doesn't hold back at all when it comes to what they think about Trump's claims.
Uh-oh.
They just straight up call them false.
Wow.
And they even go so far as to suggest that there might be a deliberate attempt to turn public opinion against the IRS.
Interesting. That's pretty strong language.
It is.
Yeah. It's important to acknowledge how strongly the source material feels about this, right?
Absolutely.
They're expressing some serious doubts about whether those statements are accurate, and they're even questioning the motivations behind them.
Yeah.
Their analysis seems to say that this isn't just like a small mistake. This could be a calculated effort to mislead people.
Exactly. So, big picture, what we're getting from this Ring of Fire transcript is a very different story than what Trump presented in Vegas.
Very different.
They're saying that those 88,000 new IRS agents, well, they just don't exist. In fact, the number he used is even bigger than the total number of people who work at the IRS right now.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It really makes you think, when you hear such a big difference between what someone says publicly and the information that's available from other sources, what does that tell you?
It's a good question. As we wrap up this deep dive, it seems pretty clear that this idea of 88,000 newly hired IRS agents just doesn't hold up based on what we've seen today.
It really doesn't. And I think it highlights how important it is to be critical of the information we come across, especially when it comes to complicated stuff like government agencies and taxes.
Yeah.
These narratives can be really powerful, but taking a moment to look at the actual details can often show a very different picture.
Absolutely. It really makes you think about the bigger picture here. Why are these kinds of claims being made? How do they affect public trust and our understanding of these issues? And ultimately, how can we all get better at figuring out what information is reliable?
These are great questions. As a final thought for everyone listening, we've broken down these claims about the IRS, we've looked at the counter evidence, and we've talked about the implications. I want you to consider this. How does this whole episode make you feel about the way we talk about government agencies and taxes in our society today? What new questions do you have about the information you encounter every day?
That's something for all of us to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time.
See ya.